Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to get into something that, well, it really is the bedrock of a free society. It's this one simple idea that protects you from the power of the state, from the anger of a crowd.
It's a concept that's often called the golden thread of justice.
Exactly, the golden thread. We're talking about the burden of proof, the sacred rule that you are innocent until proven guilty. And for this, we're doing a really specific deep dive today.
We're looking at some really fascinating material. It's based on the research compiled in the book True Courtroom Stories by Mr. Zahir Ahmad Mir. I believe this is drawn from the research for episode 93.
That's right. And what's so compelling about this source is how it connects these, ancient judicial ethics directly to the laws we live under today.
It really does. It draws a straight line from prophetic judicial standards all the way to modern legal doctrines in places like the UK and Pakistan. We're basically tracing the DNA of justice.
So our mission today is to unpack this one core principle, this idea that is so fundamental.
The burden of proof is upon the claimant, and the oath is upon the one who denies.
That's the one. We're going to explore how that single idea, which is really designed to prioritize hard proof over, feelings or suspicion, how that shaped entire civilization.
It's a huge deal because it dictates the entire relationship between the person accusing and the person being accused. It forces the system to do the work.
Right. It's not the easy way out.
Not at all. It rejects the path of least resistance, which is always, to just believe the accuser, especially as they're powerful. When you demand that all the work, the investigation, the cost, the evidence rests on the claimant, that sets an incredibly high bar.
Okay, let's unpack this then, starting right at the beginning with what the source material calls the Islamic foundation of this rule. So the source says this rule, and I'll say it again, the claimant must prove, the defendant may deny, is one of the greatest civilizational achievements of Islamic judicial ethics. Why is that? I mean, why is a simple maxim like that considered so revolutionary?
Well, to get why it's so revolutionary, you really have to look at what was there before, what it replaced.
Which was basically tribal justice.
Exactly, tribal justice. And in those systems, justice wasn't about facts. It was about status. It was about your clan, your family, your wealth. If a powerful chief accused a common farmer, whose word do you think carried more weight?
The chief's, obviously. Every time.
Every single time. And so you get these swift, totally biased outcomes that were really just about reinforcing the existing social order. It was about power, not truth.
So this maxim comes in and just turns all of that upside down.
Completely. The core prophetic judicial maxim is, as we said, the burden of proof is upon the claimant and the oath is upon the one who denies. That is a total rejection of status-based justice. It's the court saying, I don't care if you're a king or a pauper. All I care about is what proof you bring to me.
That's a huge shift. So the court stops being a place for settling scores or like a forum for tribal revenge.
And it becomes an institution dedicated to objective, verifiable facts. But let's dig into the practical side of that. What does it actually mean to put the burden on the claimant?
What does the system demand from them?
It demands an enormous amount of work. It requires real investigative rigor. You, as the accuser, can't just walk into court and say, I have a feeling he did it, or everyone knows he's a bad guy.
Suspicion isn't enough.
It's not even on the table. You have to come with your case already built. You need evidence, you need witnesses, you need documents, whatever it takes to back up your claim with measurable facts. And this is crucial. Those facts have to be evaluated objectively.
But doesn't that make it incredibly hard to prosecute certain crimes? I'm thinking of things that are done in secret, like fraud, where the whole point is to hide the evidence.
It does. It absolutely makes it harder. And that difficulty is the entire point.
The difficulty is a feature, not a bug.
It's the central feature. The system makes a choice. It says it is better to have a difficult, resource-intensive path to conviction than an easy, error-prone one. Because that difficult path acts as a filter. It weeds out all the frivolous, baseless, or even malicious accusations.
Because the accuser has to actually invest their own time and energy to build a case.
Yes. They have to do the work. The court's job is then to verify the evidence they bring, not to go on a fishing expedition based on a vague suspicion. This is what stops the legal system from being weaponized.
So the accused person, the defendant, they're basically shielded by this. They can remain silent until and unless the person accusing them has cleared this massive hurdle of proof.
Precisely. They don't have to prove their own innocence.
Which is, it's logically impossible, right? How do you prove a negative? How do you prove you didn't do something?
You can't. And if a legal system demanded that, it would just become a machine for persecution. Every single person would be constantly trying to defend themselves against anything anyone could dream up. This maxim avoids that trap completely by demanding the positive proof from the other side.
Okay, so what happens if the claimant tries but fails? They can't meet that standard of proof. What's the next step? This is where the oath comes in.
Yes, the oath. It's the final backstop. It's this profound moment of closure. If the judge looks at all the evidence presented and says, this isn't enough, you haven't met the standard, then the defendant is given an opportunity.
They get to take a solemn oath of denial.
Exactly. And in that tradition, the oath isn't just words. It carries immense religious and moral weight. It's seen as the defendant calling upon a higher power to witness their denial. Legally, once that sworn denial is made, in the absence of proof from the claimant, that's it. Case closed.
The process is terminated.
In the defendant's favor, the court is saying, we refuse to proceed on a foundation of mere suspicion. It protects the defendant's liberty, their property, their dignity.
So it's a declaration. It's the court saying freedom is the default state, and only an overwhelming amount of factual evidence can change that.
It's the highest form of judicial protection imaginable. It means your life, your energy, your resources, they're safe from being consumed by baseless accusations. If you lose that one principle, the entire legal system just becomes a tool for those in power to punish their enemies.
The whole system's integrity hinges on that initial demand for proof. And this idea of resisting emotion, of resisting what's popular or convenient, it's illustrated so well in a case narrative from the source material. This is where we move from theory to a real high-stakes test of a judge's integrity.
Right. This anecdote is so important because it shows the principle in action. The scenario is a classic one. A dispute in court between a very powerful, very influential person making an accusation.
Against someone much weaker, someone with no social standing.
A socially disadvantaged person. The power imbalance is huge from the very beginning.
And you can feel the pressure already. In any system, there's always that unspoken push to just side with the powerful guy. People assume they're more credible. And the weaker person is, frankly, more disposable.
And the source makes it clear this wasn't just unspoken pressure. It was explicit. Public sentiment, the mood of the crowd, was overwhelmingly in favor of the powerful accuser. The people were ready. They were expecting a conviction. They wanted to see the weaker person punished.
So it's the perfect test case. Does the judge follow the will of the crowd and maintain social harmony, or do they stick to this abstract, maybe unpopular rule of law?
And the judge's response is just. It's a masterclass in what judicial independence is supposed to look like. Despite the crowd, despite the potential backlash, the judge completely ignores the social dynamics. The status of the two people becomes irrelevant.
All that matters are the facts.
The only thing that matters are the facts. The judge doesn't waste a second on the accuser's reputation or the defendant's lack of one. He just cuts through all that noise with three incredibly specific, fact-based questions.
Okay, what were they?
First, he asks, where is your evidence? Not what's your story, not who do you know. Where is the tangible material proof? A document, a physical object, something the court can measure.
So right away, he's eliminating just relying on someone's word. What's the second question?
The second is, who witnessed? This is about external corroboration. It's the court saying, your accusation alone is not enough. Even if you are a powerful person, someone else has to have seen it.
And the third question seems to sort of bring it all together.
It does. The third question is, what is the proof? This is the final demand. It's asking, have you combined your evidence and your witnesses into a case so strong that it leaves no other reasonable conclusion? It's a demand for certainty, not just a strong hunch.
The judge basically forced the powerful claimant to stand before the court with nothing but the facts of his case. No reputation, no public support, just the evidence. And what happened?
The claimant couldn't do it. Despite all his power, despite the crowd cheering him on, he couldn't produce the objective proof required. He failed the test, and so the court refused everything. No punishment, no confiscation of property.
The weaker person was protected, not because they had friends in high places, but because the law was applied neutrally.
And the judge's reasoning here is the key takeaway. The source highlights it. The judge basically said, 1, law is not driven by the psychology of the crowd. 2, courts exist for the specific purpose of resisting mass emotion. And 3, justice demands measurable proof.
That is timeless. The idea that a court's function is to be a brake on popular passion, not an accelerator.
Exactly. If courts just did what the crowd wanted, you wouldn't need them. You could just have a vote. The court is there to be the check on the tyranny of the majority, especially when that majority is whipped up into an emotional frenzy.
So refusing to punish someone or take their property just based on a rumor from a powerful person, that's the whole system working perfectly.
It is. The system held. It prioritized the principle of proof over the satisfaction of the powerful. And it shows that the true strength of a justice system isn't measured by how many people it convicts, but by how reliably it protects the innocent, especially when they're unpopular.
It has to be a sanctuary for fact.
A sanctuary of objective inquiry. That's the moral commitment. And this idea, this ethical need for certainty before you punish someone, it's not isolated to one legal tradition. It's a universal truth. You see it pop up again and again in different cultures, in different centuries,
Yeah.
which tells you it's a fundamental part of what we consider to be just.
We see a really direct parallel in modern common law systems.
Right.
The gravity of this principle is so huge it was bound to reemerge, so we leap forward centuries across the globe to the UK. We're talking about a landmark case, Wilmington v. Director of Public Prosecutions from 1935. This is where the British legal system really engraved this idea into its core.
The Wilmington case is absolutely seminal because before 1935, there was some, let's call it doctrinal creep. There were some ambiguities in English law, especially around murder cases.
What kind of ambiguity?
Well, there was a developing idea that if the prosecution could prove that you did the act of killing, the burden then shifted to you, the defendant, to prove that it was an accident or that you didn't have malicious intent.
Wait, so that's exactly the problem the original maxim was designed to prevent, forcing the accused to prove a negative.
Precisely. You can see how the logic was starting to fray. And the House of Lords, which was the highest court at the time, stepped in to stop it. They wanted to erase that ambiguity and put the presumption of innocence back on solid ground.
And they did that with a very famous declaration.
A very famous one.
Yeah.
Lord Sankey delivered the judgment, and he said, the prosecution must prove guilt beyond reasonable doubt. He went on to say that throughout the web of English criminal law, one golden thread is always to be seen, and that is the duty of the prosecution to prove the prisoner's guilt.
That phrase, the golden thread, is just so powerful. It's not just a rule, it's the structural integrity of the whole system. You pull that thread and the entire fabric just falls apart.
It's totally non-negotiable, and it's important to get the nuance here. The ancient maxim was mainly about the burden of proof. Who has to prove it? Wilmington reaffirms the burden, but it also clarifies the standard of proof.
Which is beyond reasonable doubt. What does that actually demand from a prosecutor in a courtroom?
It demands the highest possible level of certainty you can get in any human system. It means the prosecution can't just prove you did the criminal act. That's the actus reus. They also have to prove you had the criminal intent, the guilty mind, the mens rea.
And they have to prove both of those things beyond any reasonable doubt.
Yes. And in Wilmington, the danger was that the burden of proving the mens rea, that the killing was intentional, not accidental, was sliding onto the defendant. The House of Lords slammed the door on that. They said the state has to prove intent. The defendant doesn't have to prove accident.
Which protects the defendant completely. The state can't win just because the accused person can't perfectly explain or prove their own defense.
The state can't win by default. It has to win with overwhelming conclusive proof. So this landmark case cemented that the common law system, just like the earlier prophetic tradition, would rather risk a guilty person going free because of a lack of proof
Then risk the irreversible injustice of convicting an innocent person.
It's the same moral calculus.
So we have the ancient maxim, its powerful echo in the UK. Now let's bring it even closer to the present day and look at a jurisdiction that really blends these traditions. Pakistan's Supreme Court and its doctrine on the benefit of doubt. So how does this all translate into the day-to-day work of a modern court? The source uses Pakistan's Supreme Court as a prime example of how vital this idea of certainty is, through what's called the benefit of doubt doctrine.
And the way Pakistan's Supreme Court applies this is known for being exceptionally strict. The source book highlights it because it's really the ultimate expression of that innocent until proven guilty mindset. The court has said again and again that if there is even a single reasonable doubt, the result must be acquittal.
A single doubt. That is an incredibly high bar. How does a judge even define a reasonable doubt? I mean, versus a doubt that's just, fanciful or speculative.
That's the key distinction. A reasonable doubt isn't just any possible doubt. It's a doubt that's based on reason and common sense. It's a doubt that arises from the evidence that's been presented or, just as importantly, from the lack of evidence.
It's a gap in the prosecution's story.
A rational gap. It's the kind of doubt that would make a careful, thoughtful person hesitate to act in their own most important affairs. It's the court formally acknowledging that our systems for gathering evidence are human and therefore fallible. And where there's a possibility of error, that possibility has to benefit the accused.
This sounds like it forces that strict separation between proof and suspicion we talked about earlier.
It's the legal mechanism for it.
Hmm?
The Supreme Court there often quotes the axiom, suspicion, however strong, cannot replace proof. You could have a mountain of circumstantial evidence pointing to someone. It might make you 95% certain they're guilty.
But if the prosecution can't close that last 5% gap with a hard, undeniable fact,
Then the benefit of the doubt must be given to the accused, period. This is the modern formal version of that judge resisting the crowd. The court refuses to be swayed by the emotional weight of suspicion, no matter how strong it feels. It demands measurable certainty.
and what's the ethical engine driving this? What's the moral logic behind being so strict?
The moral calculus is explicit, and it's the same one we've been tracing. It's that a wrongful conviction is a far greater evil than a wrongful acquittal. The system makes a conscious ethical choice to prioritize protecting the innocent over guaranteeing the punishment of every guilty person.
That's a profound choice for society to make.
It is, because it recognizes the difference between the two types of error. If a guilty person goes free, society loses an opportunity for justice in that one case. It's a failure, but it's a limited one. But if an innocent person is convicted,
The state itself becomes the source of a terrible injustice.
a profound, irreparable injustice. It breaks the social contract. It destroys trust in the entire system. That type of error does far more damage to society than letting 1,000 guilty people walk free.
So it's about accepting a certain level of inefficiency in order to guarantee individual liberty.
And the source material connects this directly to the severity of punishment. It says punishments require certainty and doubts block irreversible harm. If you're talking about taking away someone's freedom for decades or their life, the standard has to be near absolute. Doubt becomes a firewall. It's a mandatory stop sign before the state takes an action it can never take back.
So when the court applies this doctrine, they're acting as the ultimate guardian against guesswork.
Against conjecture, against pressure, against it probably was him. They are forcing the state to prove its case to an incredible degree of certainty, or to simply stand down. It's a stunning example of philosophical continuity, isn't it? From an ancient maxim to the highest levels of modern law, the core ethical demand is exactly the same.
Okay, so we've taken this journey, we've traced this one powerful rule from its ancient roots through landmark cases to modern courts. Let's try to distill it all down. What is the core lesson here? The fundamental ratio decidendi, as the lawyers say, that Mr. Mears' research points to.
The ratio decidendi, the decisive reason that underpins all of this, it's incredibly clear. And it's something everyone, not just lawyers, should understand. It is. Justice is proof-based. Suspicion is not a substitute for evidence. That's the bedrock. That's the line that separates a government of laws from a system of arbitrary power.
And it's so much more than just a courtroom rule, isn't it? It's a whole philosophy of how power should be handled. It's rooted in a deep skepticism of unchecked authority.
It's the ultimate expression of judicial skepticism. Think about the alternative. If suspicion was enough to convict, the court system would just be a weapon for hire. The powerful, the wealthy, the politically connected, they just have to point a finger. And the state's machinery would do the rest.
The police, the courts, the prisons would just become tools for the powerful.
By demanding objective proof, the system forces the court to validate the claim, not the claimant. It doesn't matter who is making the accusation. It only matters what facts they bring to the table. It forces the system to engage with reality.
And the author's conclusion, based on all this, draws a really stark contrast, some moral lesson about what makes a society succeed or fail.
A very stark duality. He basically lays out two paths. The first is the path to ruin, which he calls the collapse. A society collapses when its courts convict by rumor.
And that takes us right back to that judge pushing back against the crowd psychology. Once a court starts listening to rumor, to social media mobs, to popular opinion instead of evidence, it's lost its entire purpose.
Its legitimacy is gone. The rule of law is dead, and it's been replaced by the rule of emotion. In that kind of society, no one is safe. The standard for your freedom is just. Whatever the prevailing mood of the day is, it's a guaranteed path to paranoia, persecution, and ultimately tyranny.
So what's the other path? The path to a healthy society.
That's what he calls the rise. A society rises when its courts protect even the disliked accused from unjust punishment.
Even the disliked accused, that's the critical part.
That's everything. It's easy to protect people who are popular or who we agree with, and that takes no courage. The true test of a just society, the real measure of its civilizational strength, is how it treats the person everyone hates. The outcast, the pariah, the person who is already condemned in the court of public opinion.
And the burden of proof is that person's only shield.
It's their only ally against the combined power of the state and the disapproval of society. It forces the system to look past the unpopularity and ask the same hard question it would ask for anyone else: where is the proof?
So the system proves its own integrity, its own blindness, by applying that rule equally to everyone.
That's the final synthesis. This whole principle, the burden of proof, is the main engine of civil liberty. It stands against tyranny in all its forms: the tyranny of the state, the tyranny of social status, and the tyranny of emotion. It's an unwavering commitment to finding the truth, no matter how unpopular that truth might be.
It's an incredible intellectual thread to follow. We've seen this ancient ethical maxim create evidence-based justice, and then watch that golden thread get woven into the fabric of legal systems all over the world, always reinforcing the same idea: certainty must come before punishment.
And this deep dive really confirms for you that justice isn't about passion or intuition. It's an exercise in critical thinking. It demands hard, verifiable facts, and it actively pushes back against the easy path of just going with the emotional consensus. The timeless lesson: your freedom depends on that high standard of proof.
And so, to leave you with a final thought, if the highest moral purpose of the burden of proof is to protect the disliked accused inside the courtroom, what's happening outside the courtroom? What about the mechanisms in our own lives, in the media, on social media, that might be chipping away at that spirit of innocent until proven guilty?
That's a powerful question.
If courts collapse when they convict by rumor, what happens to the fabric of our society when public opinion convicts by rumor every single day? Something for you to think about.
A necessary question for our times. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the philosophy and history of evidence.
Until next time on The Deep Dive.